our periodization and periodization for people is they should understand where their base is and then where their tail end is, where they want to be in whatever 6 months, 12 months or whatever, and work their way backwards from that.
Welcome to the Wits and Weights podcast. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and this twice-a-week podcast is dedicated to helping you achieve physical self-mastery by getting stronger, optimizing your nutrition, and upgrading your body composition. We'll uncover science-backed strategies for movement, metabolism, muscle, and mindset with a skeptical eye on the fitness industry so you can look and feel your absolute best. Let's dive right in. Welcome to another episode of Wits and Weights. George Sheehan, a legend of running and running literature, wrote the following: why race? The need to be tested, perhaps. The need to take risks, and the chance to be number one. Today's guest has encountered every reason to not race. From abandonment to abuse, family deceptions, untimely deaths, drugs, and alcohol, professional athlete Stephen Benedict was confronted with more obstacles before the age of 28 than the majority of people face in a lifetime. Despite these hardships, Stephen applied what he learned on the track to remain focused on the finish line. His rules for running the race translate to almost every industry, person, and circumstance, and his story is a reminder to all who hear it that so long as you still have breath in your lungs, your race can still be won. Stephen, thank you very much for coming on the show.
I appreciate you guys having me. I look forward to talking today, and thanks for the intro.
Yeah, no, it's a great intro. So high expectations, and the audience does want to get to know you a bit better before we dive into the specific topic today, which is going to be periodization. But let's start with your background as a professional athlete, as it pertains to running the race, to optimizing performance, and then if you want to tie it into training principles like periodization, go for it.
Yeah. So my background as an athlete, I started running. Actually, I got pushed into running when I was a freshman year in high school, and I was on the football field. Football was pretty dominant for my life, as well as some other sports early on. My first sport ever being martial arts. I did 10 years of judo, and that kind of laid the discipline and the foundational aspects of being able to translate into other sports at a high level. But like I said, the track and field coach saw me on the football field when I was a freshman, approached my parents. My parents, wanted me to try something different and something new, and it really wasn't on my radar. And so reluctantly, I jumped in there for my winter season and wound up winning the county championships as a freshman. And it just kind of built up over time. And I really honed in and liked the aspect in the sport that is a one-on-one sport. It's pretty much you against the clock, and whatever you put into it, you get back from it. Obviously, it's a lot different from, let's say, baseball, football, basketball, whereas these team reliant sports, here it's, you running your race, you're in your lane. Of course, there's other athletes that are on the track with you, but you're really focusing on what your race model is compared to the other athletes. And if you lose that focus and you start running their race, automatically you're putting yourself in the red already. So, that's kind of like the early on stages. And I was able to run in some of the world's most prestigious races across the board, from Penn relays while I was in high school, to states and international races, to Diamond League meets, and then go on to things like Olympic trials and, and then the bigger platforms. So it's been a big roller coaster, obviously with not only my athletic career, but then also my story background, which was, all over the place of things. People see it as, well, he's an athlete, he's got it all together, and I was far from it. So I got a lot of loss and a lot of abandonment, growing up through the foster care system and then losing my adopted parents. So there's been quite a bit that have taught me, not only through my sports, but also in life, about resiliency and patience and due diligence, and really just focusing and keeping my eye on the prize, and, keeping good people around me, coaches, and, to my current position today, where I'm at the tail end of my career and training for my last Olympic Games, which will be Paris. And then I'll shift into and move into something else that will be in correlation to all the knowledge and the hours and the training aspects that I have been able to put in this time and try to benefit and bring value to other people's lives.
Awesome. So there's a lot there. There's definitely a lot of paths we can take. What one of the things that sticks out as me is the parallels that you talk about between the discipline and the practice and the way that you approach specifically that sport of running, in that you're really racing against yourself, you're competing against yourself, even though you compete against others at some point. You can't focus on that. It actually reminded me of lifting in a way, right? Because I don't know much about running, never have. I tried running when I was younger. It's just not my thing, but I think we can learn a lot from the sport. And what you said of, like, if you were a power lifter or a lifter, you can't focus on what other people's numbers because it's really irrelevant to your own performance. So maybe we get into that a little bit more and talk about performance, and then talk about periodization as a model for doing that, because I think there's a lot of relevance there. Do we want to start with, what you mean by periodization maybe, and why athletes or lifestyle trainees would use it?
Yeah, I think, well, first and foremost, periodization is very relevant to the period in which you are in your life and how that translates to your whether it be lifting or your specific kind of goal setting or specific kind of movement or modalities that you're doing, whether it be lifting, whether it be running, whether it be, on the field playing soccer. We only see, so me putting myself on the chopping block is, we only see for us, since track and field is not as marketed in the States, you only really see like the World Championships, or you see the Olympics every 4 years, every 2.5 years, something like that, depending on the big meets. You don't see what goes on behind, and you don't really see all of the constant due diligence that these athletes are putting in, and the coaches, in order to have our peak at those games, but also at the championships there. So, so in specific for me, like, usually September we start, and it's just base work. It's just really putting our body back into movement, flow, and learning how to run again. And, kind of trying to pick up where our previous season ended and implement that early in the season so that we're kind of moving forward. We're not starting back 2 years. We're starting where we left off after our break. So we have the rest, we have that whole aspect of recovery, that downtime, that disconnect, and then we plug back in, kind of recharging our batteries. But, our periodization for people is they should understand where their base is, and then where their tail end is, where they want to be in whatever 6 months, 12 months or whatever, and work their way backwards from that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was going to ask about that. It seemed like you want to reverse engineer from an event or a peak. I mean, we do that with nutritional periodization as well, right? You have a goal, you work back from there, whether it's lose weight or build muscle, whatever. So what about, how does specificity and adaptation play into that, right? Into how you periodize someone's programming or that phase, knowing that you have the skill that you have to develop, but you also have other things that support that, like strength, power, speed, and so on.
Yeah, of course. First and foremost, foundational aspects. If we left off on a good note, or we're going in and they're coming in from scratch, one, I need to know what their predisposed situations were, if they have any ailments or anything like that, any previous injuries or surgeries or anything like that has been chronic or ongoing, so that we can really address those, because they probably haven't gone away. They're probably just hibernating right now until things start to build up and we start adding on weight, or we start pushing the pace on things or anything like that. So,
is that what I have? A hibernating shoulder?
Yeah,
that's what I have.
Exactly.
That's the word. Okay.
Well, hibernating shoulder. I've had, hibernating Achilles. I've had,
Sure
hamstring issues. And it wasn't really until I stepped back and really addressed those things and be like, okay, well, this has been chronic and it's been going on for, let's say I'm good through the beginning phases of my training where the foundational aspect is great. And then I move on into kind of like the strength and power development. But when I get into speed stuff, that's when things start to kind of show up, right? Like when the post kind of wear and tear of things show up. But as for other people, it's just kind of the same thing. As we push the needle, things start to show up, and your body starts to show its kind of true colors, right? It starts to become transparent, and transparency with clients and also when I work with anybody is super vital. Like, I don't need you to be a superstar. You're not trying to impress me. I've already performed at a high level. So, there's no kind of ego aspect here. But, in that space is understanding foundation, understanding patience, understanding the little things of accumulation into the bigger things, like movement correction, and understanding, like, so for runners, it's a lot of feet issues that contribute to going up the chain of things through their knees, through their hamstrings, through their hips, all the way up through their scapular and stuff. So, and I think a lot of runners don't understand that is like, we start from the bottom of the foundation and work up, not where the point of kind of hurting or the kind of, debilitation is. So, there's a lot of writing down notes taking, and building relationship and rapport with people, whether they're the athlete or the weekend warrior or anything. Understanding that at the beginning, like, this is a long-term gain, just as you said, is a long-term gain, and understanding that each phase is a phase for the coinciding phases to come. All right.
The next phase, yeah.
So that's, part of the periodization thing. And the foundational piece is super important for any athlete. I mean, for track and field athletes, it's vital. If our preseason is terrible, it's going to show up come around March-ish, because when we start getting into spikes and we start pushing the paces a bit, if we haven't done the rehab stuff and the foundational strength stuff, we're going to blow a wheel, so to say. So
in this preseason, is there, I mean, a lot of what you're telling me sounds like definitely if you had a coach, they're going to be able to individualize and understand these subtleties with you and bring their fresh pair of eyes and expertise to it. But even if somebody wanted to do this on their own, who's maybe it's the first time and they're not at that elite level, is there a model that we follow in the preseason of a certain stacked level of things to focus on? Like, okay, take 2 or 3 weeks and go through this checklist and make sure you can get out of it here, at this level of health or performance. And then that tells you you're ready to go to the next phase. Can it be simplified to that level? Like, hey, maybe you can write a book about it.
Yeah, I think, in layman's terms, in a simple way is, quantity to quality. Type of mind frame. Yes, there's a lot of volume early on, but it's progressive volume. It's not let's dump the dump truck on you all in one phase, and then you're worth nothing come the next month or the next 4 weeks after the first 4 weeks. As far as program design and kind of progression in that, one, foundational strength and then strength endurance, strength power, and then quality, which is whether it be speed reps or anything on that sense. So there's kind of 4 building blocks there, dependable on the over encompassing goal or the athlete or the subject in question. But overall wise, it's really a foundational piece, and building out the spaces of those blocks and not rushing at those blocks. They could be, for one person, that block could be 4 weeks. Another person, it could be 6 to 8 weeks, depending on their learning curve and how much they really need to know. I am usually in the 6 to 8 week span of people, to give them the time and to give them that adaptation period of their body to understand movement. And then, in the beginning, I recommend somebody to have somebody alongside them at all times, or at least accountability wise, if they're new to this space, just so they can learn, right? It's like going to school. For me, my coaches are invaluable, right? I need the eyes on me because I can't see myself run, but I'm very good at making adjustments with cues given to me. And that becomes body awareness, and that becomes, conversational aspects of understanding, how the coach can relate to their athlete and how they can translate what the coach is telling them into movement or mindset, the brain body connectivity aspect of things.
Yeah. And I think that's important what you're saying to people listening, because I hear a lot of the time, I'll get a coach when I need it, or when I need to fix something or whatever. And you're like, just get the coach from the beginning, because you're going to cut out months or years of mistakes and poor habit forming. And I've experienced that personally when, my squat was terrible for years, and then I got a coach, and in one day, if he helped me fix things. One question I have is, you work exclusively with runners and endurance athletes?
No, not specifically. I mean, sprinters, yes, but I mean, I've handled athletes across the board, from NFL players to soccer players, to martial artists. So mine is more of kind of the over. What I like to see is, one, I know and I believe that sprinters are an overall package of an athlete, right? You can take them, and pretty much because of their base and what they've done through power and strength and explosiveness and movement, you can take them and plant them in any other sport. All they would have to do is learn the modalities of that sport.
And by modality, you mean the skills of that sport, basically? The
skills of that sport, whether it be soccer, becoming more pliable and versatile in their dribbling. Football, is obviously being able to take a hit and, lateral and vertical movements. So it's like learning those aspects. But as far as the core basic things of power, strength, explosiveness, that translates to pretty much every sport that's needed in some way, shape, or form. So it not only runners, but I've done a lot of corrective exercise things, strength and conditioning, and then also work through the chain of rehab and stuff too. So, it's overall aspects, but I would say my expertise from my practical knowledge is probably through the modalities of running and sprinting and explosiveness. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good to know, to put it in context. And then also, as we talk about periodization, what exactly we're talking about, because we could get very narrow and say, periodization for a powerlifting meet, or periodization for an athlete overall. But even there's general principles. So would you agree that, for example, you talk about strength, power, endurance, all of these attributes? Is strength the foundation? Is strength, I don't want to say the most important, but is it the foundation of all of these?
It depends on what type of strength we're talking about, right? Are we talking about like power strength or brute strength? Are we talking about
production of force strength?
Yeah. Production of force strength, I would say yes, across the board, is being able to utilize how much force we're applying in order to use the strength that we build in the gym in real life situations, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the times, you do have powerlifters, but those even powerlifters, I know, I've had, several friends that were very prolific in powerlifting, and you can take those guys and put them on the track, and they'll be able to run pretty damn well, mm-hmm. If they just learn the mechanics a little bit better of, cycling and force production in that. So I think it's utilizing the things that it's capabilities of being able to utilize strength in functional ways. So it's like functional power strength. I think that's kind of like what people are seeking right now in overall health wise, and mm-hmm. trying to be functional in life, right? But strong functional. And they get the misconception of, I'm going to be in the gym and I'm going to be this house and I'm going to turn into, this big bodybuilder. And it's like, you don't have the DNA to do that. And it's going to take years and years and years and years to even, build up that type of density, but
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And even when I've worked with a few nutrition clients who are endurance athletes, the question always came up of, the focus is always on the running and very little put into the strength. And hey, I need to lose weight so I'm faster. And then the question I have is, well, why don't we just spend a little time getting stronger? Wouldn't that make a massive improvement? Because to me, I think in terms of math, right? Strength to weight ratio, isn't it easier to make yourself a lot stronger than to make yourself a lot lighter? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Hey listeners, this is Philip Pape, and I'm excited to announce our upcoming totally free 21-day challenge starting December 1st. It's called the Wits Weights No Diet Holiday Body Recomp Challenge. This challenge is about learning how to achieve body recomposition. That's building muscle and losing fat at the same time without dieting or restriction throughout the holidays. I'll be giving you free videos, guides, and personalized coaching in a private group chat to help you enjoy the holidays while being satisfied and guilt-free. The kickoff call is Friday, November 17, and the link to enroll is in the show notes. No matter what episode you are listening to, don't worry. If you're hearing this after November 17, you can still register and get access to the replay and resources before the challenge starts on December 1st. Again, to join the Wits Weights No Diet Holiday Body Recomp Challenge to build muscle and lose fat without dieting through the holidays, click the link in my show notes. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, and I think for me particular, it's in the space of track and field sprinters. It's always it is a strength, and it switches from the frame to power, light frame, powerful, but you have to build that power early in the season and then switch gears and worry about having a light frame because you've already built that base and that internal engine of things. So I do agree that, yes, we need the internal engine before we go out and start trying to hit the gas on anything. And I also think that, that strength piece is super important for healing situations and strengthening other elements around ligaments and joints and just overall body and bone density, which a lot of people lose because they don't like to lift and they're afraid of lifting because of the, like we said, because of the misconceptions around it.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, Stephen. Because even in the context of people just wanting to get fit and lose weight, oftentimes the conversation is, well, you can't reveal muscle, you can't get lean if the muscle's not there, if the strength and the muscle aren't there. And by the way, being stronger is going to improve all these other issues you may be having. So it kind of translates to all of these areas. What about periodization schemes? So again, I think in terms of lifting of things like simple linear progression to undulating and block, these non-traditional types of periodization schemes for lifting. Do you have those kinds of models in the world we're talking about here?
Yeah. As far as the schemes and stuff, I mean, and again, it really depends on the subject. So I'm pulling from my own pages of personal aspects because we don't have a subject right now. But for us, it is heavy volume. Like right now, I'm in the gym twice a week, and then on the track the other probably 4 days out of the week. So it's a 6-day model right now, and we're really focusing on some of the movements and the scheme aspects are, we work off of our own body weight, right? So for our squats and things like that, it'll be, starting maybe like 55% of our body weight. And then we're working our way up that, building up those areas, building up the areas that are most beneficial to us and moving horizontally down the track, not vertically. So a lot of our posterior chain is viable to us and important to us. So hamstrings, hips, hip flexors, things like that. Lower extremities, our ankles and our Achilles and, foot strength, getting them as hard as possible. But the schemes that we're working on is, roughly around a 4 to 6 week space. That 5th week is a test week. And then the 6th week is kind of a taper down week where we're not doing any weights and we're on the track, and we'll kind of try to do a race model of to kind of get our body in that.
When you say test week, testing your lifts or testing your skill based on the strength?
We're testing both. So we'll do test at the beginning of the week, like on a Monday, and then come back on a Thursday or Friday with light flush sessions in the middle of the week, and come back and run, I don't know, maybe like a split 400 or a hot 300, and just push to see where our base is at of all the strength that we built up and the modalities that we built up in there, and all of the different drills and things that we're incorporating. So it's pretty technical on the back end, and my coaches are overseas right now, so we converse on an app, and all of the athletes are on that. So they actually write out our programs, and we go through that, and then we can converse in there if we have any questions. And they track things like our heart rate, and I wear an Oura ring to track sleep. Yeah. So try to get pretty accurate on the numbers, and burning calories on a daily basis to know what I have to put back in. But I mean, again, it's really subject to subject matter, and
it is. But I'm so curious. I'm such a nerd about this stuff, and it's my podcast, so I like to ask whatever I want. And so I don't know if the listeners, tune me out sometimes, but that's just like what I like. So I like to dig into that just a little. You said percentage of your body weight, but if somebody's a lot stronger than another athlete, are they using a higher starting percentage of their body weight, or how does that work?
No, not at the beginning. Because I think at the beginning we're all coming in with a clean slate, and because we're coming off of rest period, so we're not trying to push it. But then as that goes forward, the body weight aspect gets interchanged with kind of 1 rep max
percentages.
Percentages and things like that. So we start interchanging plugs and putting them in. So then we start to work our way. So then if it's like 1 rep max at 55%, 75%, 80%, I don't think we ever really go 100%.
So you never test the 1 RM? It's like an estimated?
Yeah, it's estimated, but the only time that we'll test is on that 5th week.
So that's what I was wondering. You test the 1 RM?
We'll test it there and just kind of get a big push in there, and only on of our big movements, our big complex movements, whether, it be full squat or quarter squat. Usually quarter squats are more beneficial for sprinters. We're just focusing on kind of that push and explosion out of the blocks. So they're more beneficial for us on the back end. And things like hex bar deadlift, and then max, vert max, and just being able to push off the ground. So sports specific things in my space, and then for other athletes, depending on their stuff. So like some of the athletes that I've done their combines for the NFL, obviously it's geared towards what
bench pressing and other things.
Right? Bench press 40, standing long, stretching and stuff like that. But even in that, I really pick out the spaces in which I feel we pick out the top 3, because that's where they'll gain the most points in, and they'll gain the most knowledge, the most kind of ahead of the curve pushing, if they can be good in 3 areas of that test. So it's usually like the 40, the bench, and a vert max.
My name is Tony. I'm a strength lifter in my 40s. Thank you to Phil and his Wits and Weights community for helping me learn more about nutrition and how to implement better ideas into my strength training. Phil has a very, very good understanding of macros and chemical compounds and hormones and all that. And he's continuously learning. That's what I like about Phil. He's got a great sense of humor. He's very relaxed, very easy to talk to. One of the greatest things about Phil, in my view, is that he practices what he preaches. He also works out with barbells. He trains heavy, not as heavy as me, but he trains heavy. So if you talk with him about getting in better shape, eating better, he's probably going to give you some good advice, and I would strongly recommend you talk with him, and he'll help you out. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. See some of those guys pounding out the 225s for, 40
Yeah.
reps or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So another question came to mind about the lifts itself. You mentioned like quarter squats. So now I'm interested in what kind of lifts are really effective for sprinters. And then also how a sprinter's training would compare to like a marathon runner's training.
Mm.
And just as a side tangent, there was just a study that came out comparing half squats and full squats
Mm-hmm.
for which muscles have the most, not activation, right? Because sometimes that can be misleading, but actual development. And some things were obvious, like full squats work the glutes more, but like half squats work the quads more. So it's interesting you mentioned that. What are some of the big lifts for like an average lifestyle person listening who wants to be a better and faster sprinter?
So I would, if they're not competing and they're just looking to kind of like run fast or in any other space, one for us, it's all posterior chain. Quads are great. But if you look at science and if you look at some of the past results of some of the best sprinters across the board, the guys with very deep and developed hamstrings are guys that are able to push down the track and get out of the blocks a lot quicker and have more cycle and ground impact through their stride. So I'm a big believer in developing the posterior chain a lot. So hamstrings, glutes, and then anything that'll help pull horizontally out of blocks. So hip flexors, and then the lower extremities of my ankles and calf raises and Achilles areas, but then also being able to translate some of that stuff onto the field. So barefoot running, squatting barefoot, really getting those cushions that divide us from feeling what the floor looks like in actual pushing and actual producing force. We do a lot of that, and I take a lot of that stuff out. But,
like, do you use squat shoes or not?
I don't. I use. I do have them. But I'd rather squat in my socks and barefoot.
Got it.
Yeah, I just feel like I get more of. I can feel the chain. I can feel the way I'm pushing, and if I'm pushing flat through the flat part of the foot and utilizing every chain up the back or every muscle throughout the chain up the back, or if I'm shifting, I can feel my base a lot better when I'm flat.
Makes sense. Yep.
So
something like hamstrings, right? For me, it comes to mind would be like RDLs or good mornings or, bodybuilding movements like a leg curl or maybe unilateral movements like step ups or reverse lunges or something. What would you say are the like top 2 or 3 for the average person to work on?
Without a doubt, definitely single leg RDLs. RDLs. Okay. I'm a huge lover and believer of Nordic hamstrings.
Oh yeah,
Nordics are like a necessity for any of that type of program. Not only for building out density and strength in hamstrings, but also helping out with rehab of, pre kind of rehab of things, and it stretches out the hamstrings and the insertions on the top of the hamstring. So you keep them nice and long, because when you're doing a lot of hamstring work, especially hamstring curls and stuff like that, the hamstring gets a lot of bunching up, so to say, in those areas. So it helps to keep them long and flexible.
So hold on that movement. How do you like to do them? Like the bar on the rack or a special machine?
Yeah, no, I usually do them with a bar on the rack, or if I can have somebody hold my my ankles and give me that extra pressure. But I usually do them on the bar on the rack. But also having I'm a big believer in also having a variable squat program. So, 1 week quarter squats twice a week, 1 week full squats twice a week. And I think that helps out with the lack of adaptation, but it helps out with, mobility and helping the body to understand, the depths of squatting, and able to produce more force at different levels.
And what squat is this? Low bar, high bar? Some front squats? What are they?
So I do front squats, quarter squats, and full squats. So front squats, and so it'll be full front squats will be in my program pretty consistently.
Mhm.
And then the other switching variable will be either quarter squats or full squats. So one of those will interchange every other week.
Okay. Are you doing them high bar or low bar?
Oh no, I'm doing low bar.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, cool. No, people listening, these are good ideas. The Nordic curl is underrated. Maybe not underrated, just not as well known, right? And it's cool that you mentioned that. So how do we avoid fatigue and overtraining? That's a big thing in my world, especially I work with a lot of older folks, and that's and I'm getting to be an older folk, and I know your body gets a little more beat up as you age.
Yeah, I think one is understanding recovery and knowing that that's a part of your training as well. That it's not just the hour and a half, 2 hours that you're in the gym, whatever your program keeps you in there for. But then understanding that once you go home or whatever you do post that is very important for the days post that to come. And that includes things like rest and recover and nutrition and whatever else that you can get your hands on. And then it becomes body awareness. Is knowing your limits. Obviously, as you get older, I put us in a space of like we're all these batteries, right? And I don't know if you ever have seen like the Energizer batteries or anything. They used to have that power strip on the side.
Yeah, sure.
Thing, and tells you how much is left in there. That's kind of how I dictate what athletes are, or across the board, or general pop is. This is your battery capabilities. This is how much you have in it, and you need to understand is when you're getting to that halfway mark is that yes, we can do maintenance in that space, but also plug back in so that we can kind of hopefully try to stay within the 80 to 85% range throughout the week instead of having 185% or two. And by Friday or Saturday, you're tapped out and you have nothing left. Now, we need to try to prolong our progression over the course of the week. And that may need to shift in what we're doing. We may need to take something out of the program during the weeks, or we may need to add something like a recovery day, like a flush day that is just recharging yourself. But that really becomes a space of understanding yourself and being able to communicate that with your coach correctly.
Sure.
And saying like, hey, and the coach needs to be aware too. They need to see that things are dropping off, that they're coming in fatigued, they're blowing fumes, and that their job is to get the most out of their athletes as much as possible and not burn them out because it's their ego trip of things. So I think there's a fine line and balance, but the recovery piece is a vital part to any performance program.
For sure. Not pushing too hard. And like you said, using biofeedback or being aware of yourself and communicating that. What about, do you program it in as part of periodization? You program in deloads, or are you more, I know some coaches prefer to do it as they go, right? Like to only use a deload if needed, because you don't want to slow down the progress if the person is perfectly fine. What's your take on that?
Yeah. I usually implement at least the fourth week as a deload.
Okay.
So I'll go 3 weeks on, and the fourth week is kind of a deload and a preparing for another 4 weeks post that. I think that that's a pretty good model. Now, I believe that some of the younger athletes can go a little longer, but each athlete is different too. You have to, like, a lot of the new things will tax people very quickly. So that needs to be taken into account for as well. And sometimes, you just need to implement it during those weeks to prolong past 4 weeks. Is like, hey, you do something like a scheme of 2 day, Monday, Tuesday on, Wednesdays off, and then Thursday, Friday on, and then Saturday, Sunday off. Right. I think those 3 days off and those 4 days on will help prolong things depending on how aggressive the program is as well. So I think there's a lot of kind of windows you can throw in there,
Sure.
but I really like to go 3 weeks hard. The first 2 weeks are hard. And then that third week is kind of a build-up week for that fourth week, where that fourth week could be, maybe one hard session, and then they come back.
Keep the intensity high, but the volume low.
Right.
Yeah, it's cool. So you're talking about the generally a fixed deload programmed in. Maybe if you're younger, you can go a little bit longer. You also mentioned even during the week, maybe undulating the volume, which speaks to me because I just switched from a 4-day kind of West Side programming where you really don't ever take deloads because the concept is you're varying the big lifts constantly and you never quite get fatigued on any one lift, but it does catch up to you. And so I moved to now a heavy, light, medium. So the middle of the week is a much lighter day than the other two. It kind of gives you that recovery. So it's pretty cool. I people listening should take all that to heart so that they can be in it for the long game. What about nutrition? Things like, I'm always fascinated with concepts like carb loading because I know the science seems to keep changing. There've been all these complicated schemes about carb loading, and it seems the science is like, no, it's pretty simple. Just like ramp it up and then eat a ton of carbs for the event. But tell me about that.
Yeah, gosh, nutrition space. Everybody's got, this is a really, really touchy space for everybody because it's so flooded with all of these gurus of, hey, do this diet, do that diet. And there's all these, plethora of diets out there. First and foremost, before you jump on any diet, diets are interchangeable. And I think they have their place and their space at particular times, depending on what your training needs are and how high the volume is, right? I think a lot of the space in which diets are, and you talk about carb loading, well, what period of training are you in? Like, so if I'm talking about carb loading and, perhaps it's my race season, and I have a race later in the week, maybe some extra carbs to a midpoint in the week would be great if I'm racing on like a Friday, Saturday, but then I need to taper that off, right? Because I don't want to go into a race heavy and feeling water retention and all that stuff and having a spillover. Yeah. And having, all those GI problems. So one, I would highly recommend one is getting at the beginning of the season or the beginning of your program is getting a blood test, getting a panel done, understanding what blood type you are, and then trying to coincide your eating with what blood type you are. So, which is really not a lot of people go that route. It is a little more integral of, the inner workings of things, but understanding what type of blood you are and understanding how your insides work and what is most your body will consume the best in performance wise, because right? So everybody understands, like, if you're giving the same diet to somebody else and you're eating, let's say, a bunch of carbs and you feel sluggish, you're not producing and your body isn't metabolizing all right. Well, obviously something in there isn't working for your system or your DNA nutrition. So sitting down with a nutrition, I'm not a nutritionist, so I don't even, I have nutritionists for me, and the spaces of doing blood work first has really helped me out a lot. I'm a meat eater. I need meat. I need the B vitamins on the back end. I cannot do vegetarian or plant-based. I do have plant-based shakes that I do in the morning because I feel like they absorb well for me in the morning. But as far as recovery aspects of things, B vitamins like buffalo burgers and bison burgers, those really help me to keep the inflammation down in my body from that space. And then, high protein like eggs and chicken and fish and stuff like that. So,
and optimum nutrition, whey protein, right?
Optimum nutrition, plant protein. That's what I use. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you do the plant protein. Okay.
Yeah, I do the plant protein with them, but then I also they do have little RTDs that I keep in my bag for post training that are whey. So those are really easy for me to throw in. But it's really,
Right.
that's again too, is understanding your particular type of DNA and the way and what diet is going to coincide with your training, but also your metabolism as best as possible. Because in a lot of those spaces is that, if you're eating the wrong things, it's going to slow your
Yep.
metabolism down. And then you're going to gain, and then you're going to be pointing the finger at everybody. So
Yeah. First of all, you're making me hungry. It's almost dinner time here, and bison burgers are making me hungry. But yeah, the general principle, people are always going to disagree on specific diets. And I'm a nutrition coach. I'm not a nutritionist, but I'm a nutrition coach. And for me, it's all about flexibility because I want the client to have something that works for them and that responds well. There's a guy I'm friends with, and I was kind of working with him on the side, and I said, "Man, you're really getting a lot of fat and not nearly enough carbs, and you're doing all this lifting." And he's like, "All right, let's try more carbs." He's like, "I just cannot live on that many carbs. I can't eat them. I'm sluggish. I don't feel good. Let me go back to high fat." He did, and he was fine. And it's like everybody is different. There's no one size fits all, so that's good. I was just really curious about carb loading specifically. Because what is it? Alan Aragon, he writes the flexible dieting stuff.
Oh, yes.
He summarized the evidence on this just a few months ago on the carb loading. And I was kind of blown away by how many grams of carbs that you possibly could eat as an athlete, and kind of reduce the protein going into an event. And I was just curious, but like you said,
for me, I really like to keep my high calories and my carbs and stuff. So I'm roughly taking in about 3,400 calories a day, right? Mm-hmm. Well, which is, pretty high. But my particular frame of the way I post my days is I'll keep my high carbs and everything is when I'm going to utilize them, right? Is pre-workout in the morning and then post-workout. And then I'll have one third meal kind of midday. And then as the day goes on, I taper off and I don't have any carbs, and I'll do like salad and fish and things that'll absorb quicker. And then I try to cut off my eating no later than 7, to just get my body into a fast a bit and to promote growth hormone through the body and stuff like that when I'm sleeping, so I can get that deep sleep. But that's what works for me. And that's where I feel the lightest. Mm-hmm. And that's where I feel like I'm gaining the most. Could I eat all day? Sure, I could eat all day. I can go through probably 2 pizzas by myself. So.
I hear you, man. I hear you. It's funny because I'm right around 3,500 calories myself, but I'm at the very end of a 6-month building phase, and I'm sick of it. I actually want to be on a diet. It's funny, and people hear that, but the body fights itself. It wants to get back to some sort of balance.
Right, and the flexibility piece is super important. Like you said, is one, it's a flexible balance. Like, yes, there's a number there, and yes, you need to know how much output you have in order to bring back the input in on a daily basis. But that number gets people really kind of blown out of the water. When you say 3,400 calories, like, oh no, I'm going to get so fat. Well, you need to work your way up to it. Like, it's not like, hey,
for sure,
go out tomorrow and have 3,400 calories when you've only been eating 1,600 calories.
Exactly. Yeah. Your body has to adapt up to that for sure.
Right.
All right. I do want to ask one mindset question, then a couple wrap up, if that's all right.
Sure.
So, you overcame all these obstacles by your late 20s, and you used all this to stay focused. So what are your thoughts about hardship in the gym and how it translates, the gym and the track, and how it translates to having a stronger mind, stronger thoughts, just like attacking life because you went through that physical hardship?
I think hardship builds resilience, and it also exposes us to figuring out solutions internally that'll show up externally. And what I mean by that a lot of times is, one, you have to understand that, there's not going to be you're not going to have a perfect day ever. And you're not going to have, you can have consistency, but even in that consistency, you're still going to have pitfalls. And I think by having those peaks and valleys, and in my own life, they've helped me to translate to a lot what I've done in sports, and also to let go of things and not to be so emotional on on the failures, and really I call it kind of celebrating the little wins and being a gold digger. And what I mean by that is just, in every situation, there's a silver lining, right? Like there's something that did go well, even if it's the most minuscule piece, something did go well. And you'd be like, hey, you know what? That went well. All of this went terribly, but this went well. And I think that's a shift in which, it's very hard to come by and it's very hard to focus on, because our brain wants to focus on the negative and it wants to pull in all the things that went wrong, while we know that there's a win there. And we let that space just sit to the side, and we don't celebrate that enough. Like even if we get promotions, even if we get a PR or anything like that, it's in that moment, and it's like, hey, great, let's move on to the next one. How can I run faster? How can I lift heavier? All right. Like we don't live in that space enough. And I've really kind of tried to focus on that space and develop that type of mindset of whatever happened yesterday, and I'll leave it there. Now, today's a new day. I have a new platform, a new canvas to put forth a better foot and also a better effort. So every time I'm on the track, I'm trying to push the pace, right? I was like, yes, that's great. And I think if we get into that space of how can we push the pace, how can we become better on a daily basis, we force our bodies to put our best foot and our best efforts. And that shows up. I think it shows up.
Yeah, no, I like that. Celebrating small wins, pushing yourself, resetting each day. And even what resonated with me is the idea that if you can celebrate those wins, the next time you struggle with that same thing and recall that you had the win, it can kind of push you through. Like, I mean, it could be something as simple or practical as you're working on a lift and you do it really well one day, and the next day it just feels like trash. Well, you did it well the day before. So there's just something has changed, and that's okay. Let's find it and fix it and move forward.
Right. It's kind of doing a reflection, right? Like I could, and that's a huge thing too, is like looking back 6 months before to where you are now. I'm like, hey, I remember 6 months, I couldn't even lift this off the ground. Yeah. And now I'm lifting 2-3 plates off the ground. So like that in a sense is like, wow, I need to take hold of that.
And it's probably way more than 2 and 3 plates for you, but no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So I like to ask this question of all guests, and that is, what one question did you wish I had asked, and what's your answer?
What one question do you wish I've asked? I think one of the one questions that I wish you would ask is, what am I excited about for the future?
Okay. What are you excited about for the future?
The things I'm excited about for the future is, one, transitioning into something new that is going to benefit from the years of experience that I've had. And then also looking forward into, kind of like home living of, I just got engaged. So,
congrats.
So I'm looking forward to having the married life and seeing what that's about, and just having a counterpart to walk things out with.
Yeah, I personally can vouch for it. It's been a great experience for me. So welcome to the club.
Thanks.
Cool. All right. So last thing, where can listeners learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, definitely. So I have my new website that's about to be launched. It's www.stevieb.com, STEVIEYB.com. And it's going to be super interactive. All the things that I have coming up, there'll be a schedule there, whether it be events or charities that I'm involved with, or races that I have coming up, and then all of the other things that are developing on the back end of just trying to give as much as I've learned out.
Cool. So that's www.stevieyb.com.
Correct.
It's going to make a little bit of tricky spelling now, so I want to make sure people know. And I'm going to, of course, include that in the show notes anyway, so people can tap on it. And Steven, this has been a really cool experience and learning experience for me, because it's an area I don't get to talk a lot about, and you're obviously an expert in the area. So I'm grateful you came on the show. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you guys having me, and I look forward to what the future holds for you guys.
Awesome. Thanks so much. If you've been inspired by today's interview and are ready to take action and build momentum on your health and fitness journey, just schedule a free 30-minute nutrition momentum call with me using the link in my show notes. I promise not to sell or pitch you on anything, but I will help you gain some perspective and guidance so we can get you on the right track toward looking and feeling your best.